You wake up in the middle of the night, and the room is silent, but your mind is screaming. You feel a weight on your chest that has nothing to do with gravity and everything to do with history. We walk through this modern life carrying invisible backpacks filled with stones we collected 10 or 20 years ago. The ego tells you that you are this pain and that this story is your identity. But deep down, there is a whisper that says this is not who you are supposed to be. This guide is not about changing your past, because that is impossible. It is about fundamentally altering how you carry it until the weight disappears. We will walk together through the garden of your mind to find the roots of this suffering. We will look at the ancient wisdom of the Buddha, not as a religion, but as a medicine for the soul. Let us begin the work of untangling the knots within your heart. We must first look at the soil where the seeds of your trauma were planted. You often believe that the pain you feel today is caused directly by the events of the past. However, the Buddha taught that there are two arrows in every unfortunate event. The first arrow is the actual event which causes physical or emotional pain and is often unavoidable. The second arrow is the one we shoot into ourselves by reacting with judgment and resistance and replay. Most of the suffering you feel right now is the result of that second arrow which you have been shooting into the same wound for years. We tend to build our entire sense of self around these wounds, because the ego loves structure, even if that structure is painful. You might say to yourself that you are a broken person, or that you are someone who was betrayed. When you solidify this identity, you are effectively watering the roots of your own suffering every single day. The mind clings to what is familiar because the unknown territory of healing feels dangerous to the survival instinct. It is like a man who stays in a burning house because he is afraid of the dark forest outside. We must understand that the root of this trauma is often an attachment to a version of reality that no longer exists. You are holding on to a picture of how things should have been or how you wish they were. This gap between the reality of what happened and the desire for a different outcome is where the tension lives. The root is not just the abuse or the failure or the loss, but the refusal of the mind to let the moment pass. We freeze the traumatic memory in amber and carry it as a precious object. To begin healing, we must first admit that we are holding the hot coal with our own hand. We often blame the person who handed us the coal, but we are the ones squeezing it tight. Recognizing this does not mean you are at fault for being hurt, but it means you are responsible for the healing. The roots go deep into a misunderstanding of what the self actually is. You are not your thoughts, and you are not your memories, and you are not your scars. You are the vast open sky through which these clouds pass. When you identify with the cloud, you become turbulent and dark and heavy. When you identify with the sky, you can watch the storm without becoming the storm. This shift in perspective is the first cut at the root of trauma. We are digging up the belief that you are permanently damaged goods. The Buddha taught that nothing is permanent, not even your deepest pain. The root of suffering withers when we stop feeding it with the narrative of me and mine. If you look closely at the root, you will see it is made of fear and a desperate need for control. We try to control the past by replaying it, hoping for a different ending. We try to control the future by worrying, hoping to prevent pain. But the present moment is the only place where the roots can be pulled out. You must be willing to get your hands dirty in the soil of your own mind. Now we move deeper into the tangled web of how these roots manifest in your daily life. Think of your mind as a great river that flows continuously toward the ocean. Trauma acts like a beaver dam blocking the natural flow of this water. When the water is blocked, it becomes stagnant and murky and toxic. This stagnation manifests in your life as anxiety and depression and a short temper. You might find yourself snapping at loved ones or feeling exhausted for no apparent reason. This is the energy of the past trapped in the vessel of the present. The body keeps the score, and it remembers every moment you swallowed your truth. You may feel tightness in your shoulders or a knot in your stomach, which are physical echoes of emotional ghosts. We often try to treat these symptoms with distractions, like entertainment or substances or work. But distractions are merely painting over the cracks in the wall while the foundation is crumbling. The Buddha advised us to look directly at the suffering without flinching. This requires a courageous heart, because the instinct is to look away. When you turn your gaze toward the blockage, you begin to see it for what it really is. It is usually a cluster of emotions that were never fully processed or felt. Perhaps you were told as a child that big boys do not cry, or that nice girls do not get angry. So you buried those emotions alive, and they have been scratching at the coffin ever since. Healing requires us to open the box and let the emotions come out into the light. You must allow yourself to feel the anger without becoming violent. You must allow yourself to feel the sadness without drowning in despair. This is the practice of compassionate observation, where you become a gentle witness to your own history. Imagine sitting on the bank of the river, watching the debris float by. You do not need to jump in and swim with the trash to understand it is there. By observing the debris without judgment, you allow the current to finally carry it away. The blockage begins to loosen not by force, but by the gentle pressure of awareness. You realize that the trauma has been feeding on your resistance to it. The more you fought the memory, the stronger it became. Surrender does not mean giving up or admitting defeat. Surrender means stopping the war against reality and accepting what is here right now. It is an act of profound strength to say, "This hurts, and that is okay." When you stop fighting the feeling, you reclaim the energy that was being used for the battle. That energy can then be used for rebuilding your life and finding new purpose. The roots of trauma are strong, but they cannot survive in the light of conscious awareness. Every time you acknowledge a trigger without reacting, you are cutting a root. Every time you choose kindness over defensiveness, you are clearing the soil. The process is slow and requires patience, like growing a great oak tree. Do not rush the seasons of your healing, for that is another form of violence. Be gentle with yourself as you navigate the rocky terrain of your inner landscape. The path out of the forest is found by taking one step at a time with eyes wide open. Let us now analyze the machinery of the mind that keeps this suffering alive. The mind is a tool that evolved to solve problems and ensure survival. However, when it comes to emotional pain, the problem-solving mechanism often malfunctions. The mind tries to solve the problem of sadness by thinking about why you are sad. It creates a loop of analysis that only deepens the groove of the emotion. The Buddha identified this as the cycle of samsara, which is wandering aimlessly in circles. You analyze your childhood, and you analyze your relationships, and you analyze your failures. While understanding is important, overthinking becomes a trap that keeps you stuck in the head. We must move from analysis to direct experience of the present moment. The analytical mind wants to divide the world into good and bad, and right and wrong. It labels your trauma as bad, and therefore something to be eliminated. This labeling creates an internal conflict where one part of you is fighting another part. You cannot heal a war by starting another war inside your own body. We must step back and look at the nature of the ego, which is the architect of this division. The ego is constantly telling a story where you are the central character. In the story of trauma, the ego often casts you as the perpetual victim. Being a victim can feel safe because it absolves you of the responsibility to change. It draws sympathy from others and validates your pain. But the Buddha teaches that this identification with the victim role is a prison. To walk out of the prison, you must drop the story and look at the raw data of your experience. The raw data is simply sensation and thought and emotion arising and passing away. When you strip away the story, the pain becomes much more manageable. It changes from my tragic life history to a sensation of heat in the chest. It changes from my eternal brokenness to a temporary thought drifting through the mind. This analytical approach deconstructs the monster until it is just a pile of parts. We see that the monster is made of paper and shadow and not solid bone. This is the wisdom of emptiness, which does not mean nothingness, but means lack of solid, separate existence. Your trauma does not have a life of its own, independent of your attention. It relies on your constant feeding to stay alive and grow. When you stop feeding it with the analytical mind, it begins to starve. We must also analyze our relationship with time. The mind is almost always in the past or in the future, but rarely here. Trauma pulls you backward like a rubber band, snapping you into history. Anxiety pulls you forward into catastrophic predictions of what might happen. The only place where you are free is the razor edge of now. In this exact second as you read these words, is there a problem? Usually the answer is no, because the problem exists in the memory or the imagination. By anchoring yourself in the now, you disconnect the power source of the trauma. The analysis shows us that the mind is a wonderful servant, but a terrible master. We must retrain the mind to serve your peace rather than your pain. We continue our analysis by examining the concept of impermanence, or anicca. Everything in the universe is in a constant state of flux and change. Mountains crumble and rivers change course and stars burn out. Yet the human mind demands that things stay the same, especially the things we love. And conversely, we fear that the things we hate will last forever. When you are in the depths of trauma, it feels like it will never end. You feel that this darkness is your permanent address. But the law of nature dictates that this too shall pass. The winter always gives way to spring, no matter how long the night seems. By aligning your understanding with this law of nature, you find great relief. You realize that you do not have to force the pain to go away. You simply have to wait and watch and allow it to transform on its own. Resistance is what freezes the process of change. Acceptance is the heat that melts the ice and allows the water to flow again. We must also look at the illusion of the separate self. Trauma makes you feel isolated, as if you are the only one suffering. You build walls around your heart to protect yourself from further harm. But these walls also keep out the love and connection that you desperately need. The Buddha taught that separation is an illusion and we are all interconnected. We must accept the messy and imperfect story of our lives exactly as it is. This does not mean we approve of what happened or that it was fair. It simply means with this sword in hand, you are no longer defenseless against the ghosts of the past. You stand in the center of your life with dignity and clarity. You understand that the trauma was a chapter in your book, but it is not the whole book. The pen is in your hand, and the next page is blank and waiting. This realization is the breaking of the chains that have held you bound. We must now cast a critical eye on the very process of healing itself. There is a trap that many fall into, which is the addiction to the struggle of recovery. You can become so identified with the process of fixing yourself that you forget to actually live. The ego is very clever and will wear the mask of the spiritual seeker to stay in control. It tells you that you are a project that is never quite finished and always needs more work. You read every book and listen to every lecture and attend every seminar, hoping for the magic key. But this constant searching implies that you are fundamentally broken and need repair. The Buddha did not teach that you are broken, but rather that you are clouded by delusion. If you treat yourself like a broken machine, you will always find more parts that need replacing. We must critique the tendency to romanticize our wounds and wear them like badges of honor. While your pain is real and valid, it is not a trophy to be displayed for validation. When you make your trauma the most interesting thing about you, then you will never let it go. You may surround yourself with others who also identify primarily through their suffering. This creates a feedback loop where you validate each other's pain, but do not encourage each other's freedom. It is like a group of people sitting in a cage with the door open, complaining about the bars. You must ask yourself if you are actually willing to walk out the door and leave the identity behind. Walking out means you are no longer the victim and no longer the one who was wronged. It means you are just an ordinary person doing your best in a complex world. To the ego, being ordinary is terrifying because it wants to be special, even if it is special in suffering. We must also critique the modern obsession with digging into the past endlessly. While understanding the root is necessary, there is a point where excavation becomes obsession. You can analyze the soil so much that you never get around to planting the new seeds. At some point, you have to say that what happened, happened, and now I am here. The relentless questioning of why did this happen can become a form of torture. Often, there is no satisfying answer because the universe operates on complex chains of cause and effect. Your parents were traumatized by their parents, who were traumatized by war or poverty. Tracing the line of blame back to the beginning of time does not liberate you in the present. It only distributes the guilt across generations without offering a solution for your heart. We must be critical of the thought that understanding the cause automatically removes the effect. Knowing you stepped on a nail does not heal the foot until you pull the nail out and treat the wound. We spend years describing the nail and the rust and the wood, but we leave it in the flesh. True healing requires the courage to stop describing the problem and start applying the cure. The cure is not in the past, and it is not in the future, but it is right here. You must be critical of any voice that tells you peace is somewhere else or with someone else. Peace is not a destination you arrive at after you have fixed everything. Peace is the ground you stand on when you decide to stop fighting yourself. We continue our critique by examining the externalization of our happiness and our relief. We live in a culture that teaches us that satisfaction comes from the outside world. We believe that if we get the apology we deserve, then we will finally be able to move on. We wait for the person who hurt us to wake up and realize the damage they caused. This waiting is a form of imprisonment where you hand the key to your cell to your abuser. The harsh truth is that the apology may never come and the realization may never happen. People are often trapped in their own delusions and cannot see the pain they inflict on others. If you base your healing on their actions, you are binding your fate to their ignorance. The Buddha taught radical self-reliance when it comes to the state of your own mind. No one can save you but yourself, and no one can walk the path for you. This sounds lonely at first, but it is actually the most empowering truth you can hear. It means that your freedom does not depend on anyone else changing their behavior. You have the power to cut the cord of attachment, regardless of what the other person does. We must also critique the notion of fairness that we cling to so tightly. We scream at the universe that it is not fair that we had to suffer while others did not. This demand for fairness is a childish refusal to accept the nature of reality. The universe is not fair in the human sense of justice and equity. The universe is a vast unfolding of phenomena governed by laws we barely understand. When you demand fairness, you are arguing with reality, and reality always wins. This argument drains your energy and fills you with bitterness and resentment. Resentment is like drinking poison and waiting for the other person to die. It corrodes your vessel, while the object of your anger remains completely unharmed. We must critique the belief that forgiveness is a gift you give to the perpetrator. Forgiveness is not saying that what they did was acceptable or right. Forgiveness is simply the decision to stop carrying the heavy luggage of hate. It is an act of self-preservation and an act of kindness toward your own heart. We also need to look at how we use trauma as a shield against intimacy. It is easy to say, "I am too damaged to love," or "I cannot trust anyone again." This protects you from the risk of being hurt, but it guarantees the certainty of being alone. The critique here is that you are choosing a slow death over the risk of life. To live is to risk, and to love is to open yourself to the possibility of loss. The walls you build to keep out the pain also keep out the sunlight. You must be willing to dismantle the fortress brick by brick. It requires admitting that your defense mechanisms are now doing more harm than good. They served you when you were a child or when you were in danger, but the war is over. You are still wearing heavy armor in the middle of a peaceful meadow. It is exhausting to carry that weight, and it isolates you from the touch of the breeze. The critical mind sees this absurdity and gently commands the armor to be removed. We stop blaming the world for the weight of the armor we chose to keep wearing. We take full responsibility for our present moment experience, regardless of how we got here. Now we move to the synthesis of all these teachings into a practical way of living. We have looked at the roots and analyzed the mind and critiqued the traps. Now we must weave these threads into a strong fabric of daily existence. The synthesis begins with the practice of mindfulness in every single action. It is not enough to understand these concepts intellectually, you must live them viscerally. When you wake up in the morning, you check in with the weather of your internal world. If there is sadness, you acknowledge it with a bow and say, "I see you." You do not try to push it away, and you do not invite it to take over the house. You treat your emotions like guests who are passing through for a short visit. This is the middle way that the Buddha described so eloquently. You neither repress the emotion, nor do you indulge in the drama of it. You walk the razor edge of pure awareness, where you are the observer. This practice turns your daily life into a laboratory of transformation. When you are washing the dishes, you are just washing the dishes, not replaying the argument. When you are driving to work, you are just driving, not worrying about the meeting. This anchors you in the present, where trauma cannot survive for long. Trauma needs the fuel of time travel to exist, and without it, it withers. We synthesize the understanding of impermanence into our very bones. When a wave of panic or grief rises, you remember that it is just a wave. You do not drown in it because you know that the ocean is vast and stable underneath. You learn to float rather than swim against the current of your feelings. This floating is a state of trust in the natural intelligence of your body and mind. Your system knows how to heal itself if you get out of the way. Just as a cut on your finger heals without your conscious intervention, so does the heart. Your job is to keep the wound clean, which means not infecting it with negative thoughts. We also bring in the element of gratitude, which is a powerful antidote to suffering. Even in the midst of pain, there are small things that are working correctly. Your lungs are breathing, and your heart is beating, and the sun is rising. By shifting your focus to what is right, you starve the narrative of what is wrong. This is not spiritual bypassing, but a strategic redirection of attention. You are choosing to water the flowers instead of the weeds in your garden. The synthesis involves a new relationship with failure and setbacks. You will stumble on this path, and you will fall back into old patterns. Instead of beating yourself up, you use the stumble as a reminder to wake up. The moment of realizing you were lost in thought is a moment of victory, not defeat. It is the moment the light turns on in the dark room. You simply begin again without judgment and without keeping score. This resilience is the true sign of healing, not the absence of pain. It is the ability to return to the center quickly after being knocked off balance. We are building a center of gravity that is deep and stable and unshakable. In this final stage of synthesis, we cultivate the supreme virtue of compassion, or metta. This is the balm that soothes the scars left by the fires of trauma. We start with compassion for ourselves because we are often our own harshest critics. You look at the wounded child within you and you offer them unconditional love. You say, "I am sorry you were hurt, and I am here for you now." This internal reparenting bridges the gap of abandonment that sits at the core of trauma. You become the protector and the nurturer that you always needed. From this overflow of self-love, you can begin to extend compassion to the world. You realize that the people who hurt you were likely acting out of their own pain. Hurt people, and this chain continues until someone breaks it. You decide to be the chain breaker in your lineage. You stop the transmission of trauma by refusing to pass it on to others. This gives your suffering a noble purpose and transforms it into wisdom. You become a lighthouse for others who are still navigating the storm. Your scars become a map for others to find their way out of the dark. We synthesize the wisdom of emptiness with the warmth of love. You understand that you are not a separate, isolated entity fighting the universe. You are the universe experiencing itself in human form. This connection dissolves the loneliness that trauma thrives upon. You feel the support of the earth beneath you and the sky above you. You are held by forces much larger than your small personal history. We also integrate the practice of generosity into our healing. Giving to others shifts the focus from me and my pain to we and our well-being. It opens the heart and allows the stagnant energy to flow out. This flow cleanses the spirit and makes room for new experiences. You realize that you are not defined by what was taken from you. You are defined by what you choose to give from this moment forward. The synthesis creates a life that is no longer reactive, but creative. You are the artist of your own soul painting with the colors of your experience. Even the dark colors add depth and beauty to the masterpiece. You no longer wish for a blank canvas because you appreciate the texture of the struggle. You walk with a quiet confidence, knowing that you have faced your demons. They may still whisper from the shadows, but they no longer control your actions. You have taken back the throne of your own mind. You sit in the seat of awareness, observing the play of life with a smile. This is the peace that passes all understanding. It is not a peace that comes from the absence of noise. It is a peace that exists right in the middle of the noise. It is the eye of the hurricane, where the air is still and clear. You carry this sanctuary within you wherever you go. No one can take it from you because it is not made of material things. It is made of wisdom and compassion and the indestructible nature of your spirit. You have synthesized the mud and the lotus into a single blooming life. The journey we have taken is not a straight line, but a spiral. You may revisit these lessons many times, and each time you will see something new. The Buddha taught that the dawn comes after the darkest part of the night. You have survived the night, and the first light is touching the horizon. Take a deep breath and feel the weight lifting off your shoulders. You are stronger than you know, and you are wiser than you believe. The past is a memory, and the future is a dream, but this moment is yours. Walk forward in peace.